Even though this was released in the 90s, Necromunda is very much a child of the 80s. Naked girders that will never be complete grasp at the sky, factories lay empty, abandoned, the coal mines are stilled by the hands of Thatcher. Unemployment soars, Thatcher's relentless focus on privatisation and her dismantling of traditional industries creates a wider chasm between the wealthy elite and the struggling working class. The world changes. Violence is the only outlet for people living in the detritus, in the aftermath of an industrial heartland, of an empire fading into irrelevance. Welcome to the world of NECROMUNDA 95. This video isn't nostalgia bait. It's not even a retrospective. What this video is a time machine. Even though NECROMUNDA was released in '95, it really did not reflect the buoyancy of the time. Cool Britannia was coming, bands like Oasis, Blur, and the Spice Girls ravages all the continents of the world. We looked forward to the turn-in of the millennium. Technology aids us to create new works of art, new industries, new ways of prospering, new ways of travelling and meeting our fellow man. The pessimism of the 80s was receding, but no, not for us. Not in Games Workshop's head offices in Nottingham. And looking at the artists, you can easily see why. It's easy to trace the influence of westerns, cyberpunk, and their healthy dose of 80s nihilism. In the 80s, cyberpunk as a genre emerges, a reaction to the technological revolution that will swallow us whole as a species. William Gibson's works on transhumanism warp humanity with technology and tap into the uneasiness of our relationship with this new technology. Blade Runner questions the importance of humanity. Are we now obsolete at the hands of our own creation? Is being human even special at all? 2000 AD pits an unrelenting authoritarian figure against the lawlessness of Megacity 1, a macro city overflowing with people. Hell, the Terminator attempts to murder a baby in the womb of a mother that has not yet conceived him. There is no hope, there is no escape, there is no future. NECROMUNDA is the ideological child of cyberpunk, nihilistic futurism, all flavoured with the open frontiers of the Wild West. An interesting concoction for sure, but how many companies have had great ideas only to see them flounder and fail? NECROMUNDA's predecessor, Laserburn, and then Confrontation, they were fine enough attempts at creating this environment. The idea of a hive city housing trillions of souls wasn't new. A reimagining of westerns set in the sci-fi universe, again, not new. What made NECROMUNDA stand apart? Yes, John Blanche. This game is littered with gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. From figures such as Mark Gibbons, Gary Morley, and Wayne England. I do not want to diminish their contributions whatsoever, and we will chat about how they influenced the game later on. But it's at Blanche's feet that I'd lay the success of this game upon. His, dare I call them illustrations? They're more like fever dreams spilled across a page. They give a distinctive voice to the world. These images are bursting with detail. Rats with lasguns, a dude with saws for hands. As a 10-year-old seeing this stuff, it was just like a mental overload. It fried something in my brains. It rewrote my personality in some fundamental way. Thank you very much for that, John Blanche. You've made me a richer human being for it. You know, as a 37-year-old seeing this, it's still sensory overload. You're still rewiring my brain even today. The tropes within NECROMUNDA weren't new, but they are distinctly flavoured by the artists and writers who worked on this box set. This was the second game my parents bought me from Games Workshop, the first being Space Hulk. And I bought it from an Argos. Well, my parents bought it for me from an Argos when they still sold through chain retailers for Christmas 1998. I remember picking up the box, the hazard striping along the box, the miniatures pictured within the gaming manuals, the art, that crazy WWE wrestler screaming on the front cover. These are all things I think of when I remember the old miniatures. It's not necessarily the plastic that came in the kit. No, it's overlaid with these images that were burned into my consciousness through the art and the front cover. Oh, but even with my nostalgia beer goggles on, these models aren't the best. Dare I say that? I know there are aficionados, I know there are people who love them out there. I do not mean to diminish your love of them. I still love them, but not because they're aesthetically pleasing miniatures, let's put it that way. And you can't be hard on the old designers. Press moulding was what it was. I know even today they're fun sculpts to paint. And you need to bear in mind, a sculpt doesn't need to be objectively good, by a metric, whichever you assign to it, to still enjoy painting it. So we've been talking for a while now. So, are we going to do this video or what? Are we going to do a little video collab together?
I think we've been talking for about the last 3 years to finally do something together, haven't we?
Yeah.
So maybe it's actually time. I think Horus Heresy 3 years ago, I borrowed a model off you and never sent it back. So pretty much since then, isn't it? So yeah, what do you want to do? Have you got anything in mind?
Yeah,
Have you got anything?
I mean, I paint a lot of Horus Heresy anyway. I'd be quite keen to do something like I don't normally do in my day-to-day.
What is there a box in the background? What have you got in the background?
Necromunda.
What's on there?
Necromunda.
Yeah, is
that
old
Necromunda?
Necromunda?
You've got that as well.
Let's do it!
And into our story comes Oliver from Broadsword Wargaming. He's doing a series of nostalgic game videos where he's taking old games from the past, painting them up, and producing videos of them. And I thought, you know what, I'll shoot my shot, I'll get in touch with him. Let's do a joint video. You take one half of the game, I'll take the other half. We'll throw down, see what we create. I wanted to go the classic route with these guys, be it Orlok or Goliath. But the Goliath are slightly more colourful, big, bright primary colours, big bright primary reds, hazard striping, fluorescently coloured hair, big and bright. But I didn't want to be hidebound by nostalgia, by the past. I wasn't going down the route of buying the original Citadel colours or using the original guides. I wasn't going to be edge highlighting everything into oblivion. No, I wanted to bring my own, I guess, flavour, my own principles, my own methodology for painting miniatures that I've developed over these years and bring them to this classic set. Oh, when it comes to painting a gang, I like unlocking a piece by getting a single detail right. When you look at these miniatures, it's easy to get a little bit snowblind. What details do you paint in what colours? I find I can unlock an entire paint scheme by just doing one thing really, really well. And it's often the largest element we see on the miniature. For a Space Marine, it's what colour armour will be. For a Necromunda gang, like these Goliaths, it's the skin. I get the skin right, everything else will fall into place. As far as building the gang goes, I will be using the list that comes in the original sourcebook. And Lord knows whether I'll stick to it. All my projects start with an idea, some semblance of structure, and I will just go with it. A project will often take on a life of its own, develop, and I don't want to inhibit my own creativity as I get into a project. So I'll start with the original gang, and I will go from there. The art style of Necromunda is characterised by gritty, detailed illustrations, and in the case of Wayne England, it treads the line of a draftsman. This reflects the harsh realities of life down Hive. The source books are filled with images of decaying industrial landscapes, oppressive architecture, and the raw, chaotic lives that gang members live who inhabit this world. The use of dark colours, dark contrasts, enhances the sense of danger and despair. and I can certainly bring this into my own work. The use of stark contrast, enhancing the shadows. I want these miniatures to look pale and healthy. Even though there's quite a lot of flesh on these, I did not want to paint them with healthy, bright skin tones. They are, in all intents and purposes, starved of natural daylight, and I wanted all of the colours to reflect that. Halfway through painting the plastics, I searched eBay, I found this. Don't judge me, I'll leave you with a little ASMR opening of a 1996 Goliath box set. If you wanted to learn how to paint the skin of the Goliath, the video is already up on the Patreon, and there will be a full video on how to paint 90s Goliaths from start to finish by the end of the year. But going along with the methodology and the thinking behind everything with this project, bright primary colours, but done in a slightly different style. I like painting in a volumetric style, and this does rely on a base coat. So we start with a black base coat and then a zenithal highlight, either done with a rattle can or an airbrush, and this marks out my highlights and shadows how they naturally form on the miniature. I use this as a guide to start building my lights and shadows. As you can see, I haven't base coated the entirety of the red portion with a single coherent colour. No, I've analysed where the shadow is, and I've applied a darker red into those shadows. I've analysed where the mid-tone is, added a mid-tone red, and then I'll go on to analyse where the light is and add a lighter colour to it. The framework of the paint job has been set up with that pre-coat, with that pre-shade. Everything else feels like paint by numbers. One thing you may notice a lack of is glazing or any kind of blending. That's because I wanted to keep the immediacy of the light and the shadow, the harshness of the illumination above the miniature. I wanted to preserve the harshness of the environment mirrored in the paint job and my selection of where light and shadow goes. Unlike most red recipes where you may see a light skin tone being used for the top highlight or some kind of ochre, instead I've used a very, very light green, a very light pastel green. Why is this? The light green will be the highlight for every aspect of the miniature. At the very top of the skin tone, light green. At the top of the red, light green. At the top of the, well, it continues on. Aspect of this miniature has a coherent highlight and a coherent shadow that binds everything together in an atmospheric paint job. Larger flat surfaces do benefit from a wet blend. We use the same methodology, this cell shading-esque appearance, laying down shadow, mid-tone, highlight, but before the paint dries, we remove any excess paint from our brush and we gently feather the two paints together, and as they dry, they will commingle, creating a much more gradual gradient across that surface. The choice to use non-metallic instead of metallic paints came about from the desire to recreate the art style as much as possible. Non-metallic metal gives me a lot greater control of the overall atmospheric effect, as well as the light sources available to the miniature. Instead of relying on a light source to reflect the metallic pigment in the paint, instead I can control everything absolutely. I start with a cool turquoise base, add a little black, and then mix a lighter ivory into the tone. And I simply work up the scale from dark to light. I can also add a few scratches here and there to show off the the gun's aren't in the best condition, and I can show that through the scratches that I apply to the surface of the gun. The quality of the metallic sculpts did encourage me to apply extra details, extra shading, extra layers that then bled its way out into the plastics. Overall, I believe the work was elevated through my enjoyment of painting the metallics and then wanting that reflected, the quality of work, I wanted that reflected in the plastics. I couldn't help but freehand kill and die. I think a Goliath would be able to spell those words, although on this scale I barely did. A nice little extra touch to an ancient miniature. And this is what the miniature looks like once all the details have been rendered. Our Goliath with a pump-action shotgun. Now the basing. What are we to do with the basing? Well, I was heavily inspired by the front cover, how it has that sickly green and ochre flavour to it. And I wanted this reflected in my own base. So I take an olive green, I mix that with an ochre colour, I believe it was English uniform from the Vallejo range, and I slap this on the base. I slap portions of it in green. It's mainly green at this stage, but then little hints of khaki here and there to give nice variation of tone across the base. As the paint dries, I take a little bit of my ochre colour, in this case I believe it's an English uniform or some kind of mustard colour, and I gently dabble this onto the base, wet blending it on there. I'm trying to pick out the top details in my ochre and leave the underside green. And no goblin green on the bases, I'll leave that up to Oliver. Okay, next up I take a dark grey brown. I gently dry brush this over the most prominent and largest pieces of debris. I also take a very bright orange and dot this in places to drag attention to the, I guess, toxic wasteland these guys are fighting over. A few hundred brush strokes later, and this is the result. A fully painted gang of 90s Necromunda miniatures. The Goliaths. Haven't named them yet. Need a good name for them. But the entire plastic gang is complete, as well as a couple of metal bad boys in there as well. Not sure when I'm going to play with them, but after completing it, it did get me thinking about the legacy of the game. What it means, what it's done to the wargaming community at large. Legacy is profound. It's a game that's still in operation today, and it influences countless tabletop games and RPGs with this blend of narrative depth, tactical gameplay, and rich world building. The writers today very much emphasised that any Necromunda rule is a rule set. It's a GM guide, and you get the most out of it by trying to create an engaging story rather than trying to win a game. I think this is the enduring legacy. This is the thing we need to hold on to in Necromunda. That is a vehicle for storytelling in this horrific, nihilistic world birthed out of the 80s. Oh, done. Dunzo. God. What was that? I don't know. This video is much different from how we envisioned this. It's just a simple challenge. You paint one half of the box set, I'll paint the other. I've been watching a lot of nostalgia videos in the run-up to this, and I wanted something a little bit different. I've tried painting miniatures the way they were in the 90s before, and they just don't work for me. I wanted to bring a fresh take on an old sculpt, because I love miniature paint jobs like that. I love the old miniatures. So I wanted to take something we all love, we all recognise, and breathe a little bit of new life into it, applying different methodologies, different lighting scales, different, how I've become as an artist, how I've developed myself. I wanted to impress this on the old miniatures, and this is the end result. So I hope it encourages you to do the same thing, to experiment, to do new things with old sculpts, to see old sculpts in new sights again. But as for this video, God, I'm not really sure what it is. It's not a nostalgia video. It's not a retrospective. It's a jumble. It's a jumble of impressions, as unfiltered and as, I guess, unprocessed as a child opening this box set for the first time. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more like this, like, sub, and more importantly, leave a comment down below. Because check out my stash. Check out all the old miniatures, all the old games that I have just lying around here, ready and raring to go. I'd love to produce another video like this. But what would you like to see? What would be the next box set you'd like me to see tackle? So write in the comments below. Let me know. Share the video with a friend. Hit the sub button. I'll leave you with Jerry Halliwell. And my God, it all started going downhill since then.
Hola, toda mi familia en Barcelona y Huesca. Hola.